Listeners, I see Michael already smiling. He anticipates what I would say. My good friend.
Yeah, and I put my head on a block, and I offer Mr. Brother Bishop the scalpel to cut it off.
The political leader has said several times up to last night that that is not a reflection of her personal views or the views of the party. And you understand, George, how elections at the party level work.
So, Dr. Pei, do you have ties? Do you have ties to the National Democratic Congress, Dr. Pei? Or rather, were you commissioned by the NDC
to use that information? Because it seems interesting that a lot of your advice is very consistent with what was said. Brilliant.
And Claudette, good luck with everything.
You too, man. May the best candidate win in the town of St. George.
But kill on.
Yes.
You is a tongue man too, so stop it. Tell everybody you are a tongue man too.
We are a people who have always aspired for more. We've always aspired to do better. We've always accepted that not because your mother didn't go to secondary school, you should go. It has always been the other way around. You should aspire.
You've been there for a long time. Want to be queen of St. Andrews, but yet the problems around you you're not seeing. You can't pray yourself out of the problems in St. Andrews. You must.
Some persons were getting pension after 2 terms in office, right? And the persons that work for 26 years plus not getting anything. It's just unfair.
God is good, and God looks after me. You know, not just my wife is no longer here, so both herself and the father up there are looking after me very, very well indeed.
Not a few people that you pick up by the side of the road to run in an election. These are not people that you mustered up and you pulled together a few months before you think an election is going to call, and you say we want to win an election, so let's come together.
Hello everyone, I am Chantal McGuire, the local bred Grenadian actuary and asset liability management expert. Are you satisfied with your current finances? Are you curious and constantly looking for ways to make additional income? Join me on the Bob Report as we strive to empower you, our valued audience, to become more financially literate and help evolve Grenadians into a mindset that's investment focused and entrepreneurial. Literacy is about freedom. It's about being able to control your money and not letting your money control you. It's about foresight for a brighter future. Our core mission is to promote financial literacy and share money-generating opportunities for everyone. Join us on the last Sunday of every month, starting July 30th, as we strive to provide the keys to financial freedom.
Hello and welcome to the January 28th edition of the Bub Reports. I am Rion Charles. As Grenada heads into the home stretch of its 50th independence anniversary, we continue our conversation this week about the meaning of independence. We will delve deeper into a conversation on what it means to be Grenadian and the role that Grenadian history, heritage, and culture play in shaping one's sense of Grenadianism. We also sit with a member of the St. George Northeast Independence Celebrations Committee. Hello and welcome to the January 28th edition of the Bub Reports. I am Rion Charles. As Grenada heads into the home stretch of its 50th independence anniversary, we continue our conversation this week about the meaning of independence. We will delve deeper into a conversation on what it means to be Grenadian and the role that Grenadian history, heritage, and culture play in shaping one's sense of Grenadianism. We also sit with a member of the St. George Northeast Independence Celebrations Committee to discuss their upcoming activity. The event will be expected to honor 50 citizens from the constituency who contributed to its development and Grenada's development, respectively. Later in our program, as law enforcement and some citizens continue to lament the growing influence of the Trinidad musical genre on Caribbean youth, we sit with a law enforcement and entertainment expert to discuss the recent decision by Grenada to ban Kman6ixx from performing at a private event organized around the events commemorating Grenada's 50th independence anniversary celebrations. In December 2023, a shooting incident on the Church Hill Roosevelt Highway in St. Augustine, Trinidad, claimed 4 lives, including an innocent bystander. This event, in which Kman6ixx was targeted, has raised serious concerns in Grenada and the Caribbean about the potential risks of his performance on the island. Senior Superintendent Richard Smith from Trinidad and Tobago described the shooting as a demonstration of a, quote, lack of care and concern, unquote, for public safety. This incident is part of an ongoing gang conflict in Trinidad and Tobago, specifically between the 6 and the 7 gangs. Over in St. Lucia, law enforcement there expressed concern about the infiltration of Trinidadian gang figures into St. Lucia, which may create a potentially combustible situation on an island that has an already high murder rate. We welcome our guests, Chris DeRiggs, playwright, Dexter Mitchell, promoter and founder of the Made in Grenada Festival, Derek James, member of the St. George Northeast Independence Celebrations Committee, Dr. Oliver Benoit, professor and artist, Zachary Hippolyte, sergeant in charge of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. Here is our weekly editorial, titled 50 Years of Grenadian Independence, Real and Imagined. We thank you for joining us.
Viewers and listeners, we welcome you to this week's edition of the Bub Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kellen Bub. Now, in February, Grenada will celebrate its 50th anniversary of independence. It will be a time of celebration. It would also be a time when Grenada would mark a significant milestone in its post-colonial history. The date marking the end of colonial British rule, as well as the forging of a proud national identity, despite the lingering material impacts of the colonizers' imprint on Grenada. Now, this year's Golden Jubilee is, however, happening amid a deep irony. For example, a significant portion of economic and social policy is not dictated by the government, but by the Washington-based International Monetary Fund. The country continues to depend on funding from the global North institutions, such as the World Bank and European Union, to develop its economy, despite the welcome pivots to Africa. Grenada's economic challenges are largely due to a lack of true autonomy and self-determination. Now, while political independence might have come 50 years ago, it did not include a reorientation of economic relationships or a shattering of colonial mentalities. We still view British colonial awards as the gold standard of national recognition and still bear allegiance to an unelected white aristocratic British monarch whose only common bond we share is that of oppression and subjugation. That does not mean no one tried. August last year also marked the 61st anniversary of the demise of the West Indian Federation, which attempted to integrate the English-speaking Caribbean into a cohesive political and economic union, perhaps leading to a radically different reality than the one faced by the region's small island nations today. The West Indian Federation lasted from January 1958 to May 1962 and included Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and Montserrat. Britain had created the original template for the Federation in 1956 with the British Caribbean Federation Act as a way to satisfy independence demands throughout the English-speaking Caribbean. In September of 1961, as Bustamante promised, Jamaica voted in a popular referendum to withdraw from the Federation. Trinidad pulled out next, instead of inviting the smaller islands to join it in a unitary state of Trinidad and the Windward Islands, led by Dr. Eric Williams. The smaller islands rejected the proposal for fear of losing their unique identities. The federation of more than 3 million people was shattered in Jamaica and Trinidad, as well as the smaller Caribbean islands, most with populations of less than 100,000 people, opted for individual independence. Of course, Grenada became the very first of the smaller islands in the Windward Islands to obtain independence in 1974. Now, in a book titled The Growth of the Modern West Indies, Caribbean scholar Gordon K. Lewis remarked that the failure of the West Indian Federation was largely due to British colonial policy, which, quote, kept the islands unnaturally apart from each other for 3 centuries or more, and then expected them to come together in less than 15 years, unquote. Lewis continued, quote, political imperialism, in brief, explains, more than any other single factor, the present disunity of the region, the aimlessness so distressingly apparent, with the resulting trend towards micro-nationalism, unquote. Now, with the demise of the Federation, each member nation was left to brave the unforgiving global economies alone in what Williams called a disgraceful state of fragmentation, as the islands were much weaker independently than in the proposed federation. In many ways, these words still continue to haunt the Caribbean today. As insular independent political units, Caribbean countries have been unable to reorient the global terms of trade while locked into a global economic system that has retarded their abilities to diversify their economies, develop indigenous institutions, and achieve a regional and cultural identity. And also, finally, before we get to our first 2 guests, we wish to congratulate Finley Jeffrey Scholar on winning the 2024 Independence Calypso Monarch in his home parish of St. Patrick. We congratulate Scholar and all of the participants in last night's very high quality show that was excellently produced. And at this time, I wish to welcome Sergeant in charge of the Community Relations Department of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. He is Sergeant Zachary Hippolyte, as well as Mr. Dexter Mitchell, who is the founder of the Made in Grenada Festival. Now, viewers may be wondering, why is it that I assembled a promoter and a police to appear on the program this week? But the logic would make sense shortly as we get into this conversation. Gentlemen, welcome to the Bub Report this week.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
Absolutely. Now, absolutely. Now, Dexter, let me begin with you. Now, can you comment on Grenada's decision to ban Kman6ixx from performing on the island? Do you believe that this was a prudent move, in your estimation, as someone who works in the entertainment industry?
I was not aware that he was officially banned. I know there were some discussions. I saw something from the promoter saying that he was waiting on the police. And the next thing I saw was a flyer announcing a different artist. But I think under the circumstances, if you have somebody who, as you mentioned in the opening, whose life is at stake. There have been 2 attempts on the life of the artist. I think it is very risky. Are these people going to try to follow him to Grenada? What is the risk for the citizens of Grenada, people attending an event where he is featured? So I think it was a prudent move. Not everything, and especially in our business, not everything has to be legislated or regulated. But I think there are times the authorities would have to step in to make decisions when we do not make the correct decisions ourselves.
Now, of course, Kman6ixx has a popular culture appeal, not only in Grenada, but as we would find out in St. Lucia and perhaps around the Caribbean, in the Caribbean basin. You look at a lot of his videos on YouTube and it's in the millions of views. Now, many young people I know were very disappointed with the decision by the government to ban, or if we're saying that he was actually banned from performing on island. Do you think that there is a disconnect between how older generations see this issue versus how younger people see it?
No, I don't think there's a disconnect. I think we are treading on some very dangerous territory. I think that has to be regulated. This is, Dr. Bob, and I would submit my opinion. This is less about music and more about lifestyle. There was always, there've always been lyrics in dancehall music, in other genres of music, about violence, about guns, which was a reflection of what took place in society. So when the Bounty Killers and the Binimans and those guys were singing about guns and shootings, it was a reflection of what was taking place. The dance and the danceship and the political affiliations in Jamaica. What we are experiencing now are gangsters using music as a way of influencing young people to get them involved in gang activities. That is completely different, and I think it is well within the ambit of the authorities to step in and to curtail this as quickly as possible. Let me also proffer very quickly that I do believe the beginnings of any discussion along those lines has to look at the male crisis, young male crisis in the region. I do believe that we have a young male crisis in the Caribbean that has to be addressed. We are not going to fix it, and I'm sure this sergeant could speak to that. We are not going to fix it at the end with the importations of guns and violence in schools and so on. We have to go back to the drawing board and deal with the crisis of young men in the Caribbean.
And speaking of crisis, let me bring in the Sergeant Zachary Hippolyte of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. You are in charge of the Community Relations Department in the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. So thank you. Now, I'm not too sure if you were following these developments in Grenada in respect of the concerns raised by many citizens. Now, can you react to the eventual outcome of this situation where Kman6ixx eventually did not make his way to Grenada? Perhaps he might be making his way to St. Lucia. but let us talk about that concern that the Royal St. Lucia Police has. And of course, last week you issued a clarion call to parents and a warning to parents of the impact of that popular culture appeal on young people. So first and foremost, can you talk about that popular culture appeal and the way that popular culture appeal it has seeped into St. Lucian culture?
Okay, most definitely. Thank you once again for inviting me.
Yes.
My department, we work closely with our schools and other stakeholders when it comes to assisting with delinquent youth and enforcing school rules, etc., good behavior. And I remember it was about probably September last year where we started getting reports and concerns from teachers and other students that there is this new gang operating. And I'm like, when I hear that, I'm saying, what do you mean by operating? Well, our students are being influenced and they're speaking about the 6 and the 7. So they have taken sides. Some saying they're 6, some saying they're 7. So when I heard about that, I started doing some research. I myself, I love music. I love dancehall music. And then I realized, but wait a minute, I always knew there was an artist called Rebel6. I think that was 3 years ago. He was killed in Trinidad, etc. And then I'm saying to myself, but this is a new phenomenon taking root in St. Lucia. And then when we started, for example, intervening in certain activities involving young men, they would actually admit to my department and to myself that, yeah, I'm with the six. I say, what are you talking about? Oh, well, boss man, don't you the music, the fellas in Trinidad, etc. You know, the vibes. We like the vibes. So the music, and I've listened to them because I need to get an understanding of what's going on. It's catchy, good melodies, and it's unfortunate people like Kman6ixx, who I find have a very nice voice, he has a good lyrical flow, is using his energies to promote this type of what we call murder music and gangster lyrics, especially aimed at his opponents, you know. And what artists need to understand, and I agree with Mr. Mitchell, that's his name. There's always been gangster lyrics going way back, like he said, Bounty Killer, Beanie Man. I grew up listening to those artists, but it's now a lifestyle where, like he said, and I so agree, gangsters who belong to gangs are using their God-given talent to produce lyrics and music aimed at each other, but not realizing that young people who now have access to the World Wide Web is being entertained and being influenced by those lyrics. And and then Mr. Mitchell spoke of agreeing with the Grenadian government, your Grenadian government or authorities, to stop Kman. What if those who are following him or want some revenge on him decide to follow them into Grenada? But there's the thing, with the advent of technology, they don't have to leave Trinidad. They don't have to leave Trinidad, and that's our concern. The gangs can reach out to counterparts, whether it be social media or WhatsApp, whatever the case may be, create that linkage. I mean, we use those devices every day to speak to people, you name it, the other part of the world. So those linkages could be created, contracts could be negotiated. You don't have to. There are so many different technologies where one could receive monies. So if there are gangs in Grenada, an affiliation could be formed. And whilst this artist is performing in Grenada, someone can do the hit or attack Kman6ixx, and this person could originate from Grenada. You understand? So this is our concern, and just in December, if I may say,
yes,
what was very concerning to me, which is why I decided to go out on social media and go out on the airwaves. One of the artists by the name of Plumpy Boss, and I did some research, allegedly have serious ties to the six gangs, enemies, if you will called Seven, or the Rasta City Seven, was performing in St. Lucia. He was performing in St. Lucia, and there's actually a video on YouTube that was uploaded of his performance in St. Lucia in a place which we consider a hotspot called Grass Street, okay, where there's a gang called the OTF that is already existing in that area, and yet he was performing in that same particular area. So while some might be saying, oh, it's all just music, Mr. Bob, we do not see, Dr. Bob, we do not see what happens when the sound is turned off, when the stage, when the activity is over, when the performance is over. What linkages is being created between Plumpy Boss, allegedly between Plumpy Boss and members of those of the OTF gang? What linkages are being created? And our gang, I could never say they're on the same level with what we're seeing with Rasta City 7 and 6. But with that linkage through the artist, through the music, through the cover of performance, they can get the assistance they need to reach to that level and then cause a more serious problem in St. Lucia. So this is my concern.
And now Kman6ixx rebuttal will be that, you know, he sings more positive songs. In an interview that he did with a Grenadian journalist, Calistro Faria, he said most of his songs are more positive. And however, he did admit that he sang a few negative songs, which But obviously, those are the ones that are getting played. But I believe the point he was making was that people tend to focus more on his negative music than they do on his positive music. Your thoughts on his thought process around that?
I listened to that interview, and
Yeah.
if we were to take what he stated as golden, then we would say that no positive music in the world gets a lot of airplay and views, which is totally wrong. Which is totally wrong. So some of the world's mega hits have nothing to do with bad lyrics, has nothing to do with telling somebody I'm going to pump a easy an Uzi in your head and blow off your head top and all that. You understand? As a matter of fact, I mean, think of it. We have different genres of music, and there are lots of good dancehalls that have much more views and much more airplay than Kman6ixx. So I would disagree with his notion. What happens is people by their nature like controversy. We like controversy. And if an artist is using his expertise to send threats, etc., at another artist, but we now have the circumstance where these artists are allegedly tied to actual gangs. We have news reports showing that attempts have been made on those particular artists' life. We have those very same artists using apps like Instagram, the IG Live, to record themselves visually and saying that, hey, for example, like they say, we do like Prezi or we do like Six Dan, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then you are surrounded with young men with hoodies concealing their faces. Of course, your music will get a lot of views because people would want to see where is this going, how is it going to end. It's going to pique people's interest. So whilst Kman6ixx doubled down, it doubled down, stating that, hey, but what's going on? My good music does not have a lot of views, but my gangster lyric infused music has given me the most views and is what giving me money. It is not just on its own. There are circumstances surrounding that song because there are other gangster musics, lyrical music, Dr. Bob, that not even getting 1,000 views from upcoming artists. They're trying to break out, and there is nothing. No one cares about it. No one is listening to it because there's no situation surrounding the music. You understand? So Kman6ixx, I believe he was trying to sing for his supper. He was trying to rebrand himself in that interview, hoping that Grenada would have allowed him the access. But that is the difference, Dr. Bob.
Yeah. And Dexter, I'm going to bring you back here because, of course, Kman6ixx would not, the conversation about Kman6ixx being in Grenada would not have occurred without promoters making the decision to book him in the first place. So I'm sure he would not randomly invite himself. I mean, he was invited to Barbados. He was invited to other Caribbean countries. What does it say about promoters? Some promoters, I'm not certainly putting you in that category because what you do is certainly different too. But what does it say that promoters would want to invite him in the first place?
Yeah, and I've spoken to people here in Grenada in the industry, and it's sometimes disturbing. Even Prince Swanee, who is part of one of the leaders of the Trinidad movement, he was here a few months ago, and he had to have special security because there was also a threat on his life. So from a business standpoint, just purely as a business decision, we're not even talking the social and moral responsibility. It would not make sense. Why would you invest in a product that might expire before it gets here? To put it mildly. So I don't understand why you would pursue that. And what was disturbing on the flyer? It said 6 outside, which suggests that you are appealing to a certain sector of the youthful population. You at your introduction, your editorial, Dr. Bob, you mentioned the attempts at federation. and what transpired thereafter. And it is my view that what we are seeing here is a consequence of the failure of those attempts to unite the region. How fragmented we became post-colonialism, in that the political directorate created these gang mentalities. So you have it in Jamaica with PNP and JLP. The six, even before six, the Rasta City movement and the Muslim came out of political movement. And what you have now is the splinter of the Rasta City that has led to the six and the seven. The influence, where it's deeply and rooted in Jamaican culture. So the six influence came out of Jamaica with Squash Six, and so the Trinidadians who broke out of the Rasta City started to affiliate with Six, identify with Six in Jamaica, and the young impressionable students, young men in the small islands, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, who don't know any better, but need a sense of belonging and have been influenced by the videos, as the sergeant said, the TikTok videos, the IG lives, with these very short videos that can send very strong messages of influence to them. So like I said before, I think we need to address the young men crisis. The politicians have to take responsibility for what they have led the Caribbean into. And we cannot throw up our hands now and blame the video games or blame the influence of North America. It is something that we have created. We have to go back to the schools, go back. The music is appealing to young, very young people, Dr. Bob. The sergeant and I, when we were growing up, we knew that at 16, 17, that if the song said shoot somebody, it was not a reflection of what we should go out and do or what the artists were doing. It was just freedom of expression. It was art. No, these songs are targeted at 10, 11, 12-year-olds, telling them to go out and commit those acts. And we have the incidents in the schools to prove it. So I think
you said 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. That's very disturbing.
It is extremely disturbing and very impressionable young people. And we need, because of the young male crisis in the region, we don't play sports as we used to. We don't, we are not involved in arts as we used to. These young kids are looking for an outlet. So if you have somebody saying, okay, you belong and this is your identity, and this person does not identify with you, so they became your enemy, of course they are going to gravitate towards it. And on top of it, you provide sensationalism through video and music. Of course, they are going to belong to it. If you drive around the country here in Grenada, on any given day, from 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning, you are seeing young men by the rum shops drinking, smoking, hanging out. And that's not the one or two hotspots we used to know of before. That's all around the country right now. And again, to me, it is young people looking for a sense of belonging, looking for an identity. And we cast them out, we leave them on their own. And then we allow those influences to get to them. And we have the crisis that we have right now.
Mm-hmm. Sergeant Hippolyte, I see you nodding here in respect of what Mr. Mitchell just said here. Is that type of, I guess, set up the same in St. Lucia, where that music is being listened to by that extremely youthful population, and that it's affecting young men in particular?
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. We need to understand the power and influence of music. Dr. Bob, if you're going out on a date with an individual, with a female, and you wish to create an impression, and you're in your car, you've picked her up, you're not going to play some hardcore dancehall. You're going to play something nice, a little R&B, a little slow music. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Why at weddings, for the first dance, the couple would choose most times some song that speaks to love and inspiration and salvation? It's because what is music? The same way someone would threaten you verbally with words, it's the same thing with music. It's just that it's in a rhythm, it's in a melody. So words are powerful, far less when you put them in song, where they become very catchy, where you could listen to them over and over and over again. So most definitely this is the issue. And we might not have the political past that like Mr. Mitchell was speaking of, in terms of Jamaica, in terms of what our politicians did back then, and Trinidad, etc. You might not have that political past, but music transcends all those boundaries. We don't need to have the past, but it is currently our present, and it could be our future if we don't do something about it. If we don't do something about it. Law enforcement, we need to evolve. Our social constructs need to evolve. We cannot operate like we're back in the 90s, the 80s, 70s, etc., when we need to understand the power of technology and how easy it is now for any artist with any type of message to reach a young, impressionable mind. And parents need to understand this. Parents need to understand this, Dr. Bob. We are allowing devices to raise our kids. We are allowing technology to have more time and influence with our children just because, my daughter, my son, they're well behaved because they're always in their room on the device with the headphones on. They're not out on the streets. They're not out on the streets with the gangs. They're not out on the streets with the bad boys or the bad girls on the block, not realizing the gangs doesn't need to be out on the streets with your children to influence them. They don't need that. They now have this power of technology. You be back in the old days. Would I know who Rebel 6 is? Would I know who 6 Dan is? No, just a simple click boop, on your device, and then I could know everything about them. So most definitely, our governments need to understand that this is a very contributing factor to deviancy, needs to understand that this is a very major factor when it comes to our children's behaviors. And usually we always state, factors like poverty, broken homes, which is true. They are factors lead to those type of behaviors that eventually cause young people to come into a life of crime. But hey, the technology, the online technology is here. And whilst it has its positives, the negatives have realized, hey, but I could use that same construct also to spread bad messages and influence our youth lives.
What are you doing in respect of your department, the Community Relations Department in the Royal St. Lucia Police Force? What strategies have you been adopting I know that community policing is a cornerstone of many police departments across the Caribbean. Have you been in a position to adjust a lot of what you needed to do against this new threat? Against the backdrop of this new threat?
Currently, because for us, it's in its infancy stages. And usually when it comes to, I don't know for the other islands, but in St. Lucia, the CRB, we're spread thin. And usually, we will not get a contingent of men in the community relations branch, such as you would get, let's say, in our operational units, where definitely you need a lot of manpower to combat escalating crime, etc. But for now, our job is to educate, sensitize, not just the youths, but the parents. And you'll be hearing me saying that a lot as long as on the show, the parents. And the reason why I'm saying that, Dr. Bob, I could spend 5, 10, 15 minutes, an hour, etc., with your young one, trying to influence them, trying to show them a different path. Counselors can do that. Motivational speakers can do that. But we, in my opinion, in my mindset, we shall never have a more greater influence over your children than you, the parents, who can have it, because they live with you. They depend on you for food, shelter, clothing. They depend on you. We need to get back to the business of proper parenting and understanding the importance of monitoring our children's not just physical activities, but online activities. In St. Lucia, just last night, I was in a gathering where I was presenting a lecture to a parent-teacher association, and if there were about 100 people there, Dr. Bob, I asked the simple question: how many of you have passwords or linkages to monitor your child's devices, the devices that you bought for them, because they're not working, the devices that you bought for them? How many of you? And Dr. Bob, if there were 100 people, probably 3 hands went up. This is alarming. This is alarming, and I'm very passionate about it. And I had to tell those parents of the looming threat, the psychological threat that is impending on your child's behavior. Your children do not need to leave your home to be influenced. It's right there. And there is nothing wrong with you as a parent understanding that you have the right to tell that youngster, I need that password, or to download. There are various apps called Family Link on the Google Play Store that you could download onto your own device as a parent, that which will give you control of your child's activities on their phone. So for now, Dr. Bob, what we are doing, we are spreading this message. We're going out into the schools, we're going out to the communities, meetings, etc., trying our best to educate our parents and our students on understanding exactly what Mr. Mitchell said earlier, that it's not just about the music, it's not just about the lyrics, it's also a lifestyle. And through the use of technology, they can reach your children very quickly and influence them. So this is the strategy for now. Education, 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 sensitization. That's what we can do for now, Dr. Bob, in our infancy with this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Nipping it in the bud right now. And you mentioned the cell phone. Parents are awed by the fact that their kids can use these phones without having an appreciation of what they're doing on these phones. Yes, they're good with the technology and they're good with juking up the button and however we frame it, but do you know what your child is doing there, right?
Thank you.
And that's a problem. And then there's also an issue in respect of technology literacy as well. A lot of our parents are not as technologically literate as they should be. This is not to come down on them, but the reality is they were not digital natives in the way that this generation are. They grew up with the technology, right? But as you indicated, ensuring that their use of the technology is tempered by and guided by parental supervision.
Yes, most definitely. And just like I know in my community, in my country, the governments have initiated literacy programs for the populace, for parents, for individuals who unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to finish their schooling. But that's excellent. But like you said, online literacy. So now our governments could look into that sphere, that field also of online literacy. So in its infancy, I've already submitted a report to my commissioner of police with certain recommendations. And thanks to you, Dr. Bob, you just gave me another idea. So our social construct in terms of the Ministry of Social Equity in St. Lucia and all the other islands, we could look at that, not just literacy programs for those, but online literacy programs for our parents who unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to finish schooling. And even if some of them did finish schooling, have not really taken a grasp on the proper use of those phones, basic ways in which they could monitor their child's activities. So thank you for that, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, no, it's because the apps are there. The apps are there to monitor what your child uses, how they use it, how much time they spend on these screens, right? And the content that they engage with. So I think it's important for that media literacy piece to be included. But we have to quickly get to the next segment. Dexter, any thoughts on what the sergeant just shared here?
No, I'm heartened because to hear the part of education, law enforcement cannot grow our kids Kman6ixx cannot grow our kids. Parents who brought them into the world, it's their responsibility to grow the kids. So I'm very happy to hear the part about education. Something that we missed also, Dr. Bob, I think coming out of COVID, we did not prepare ourselves for a post-COVID world. So for 2 or 3 years, these young kids were on their devices, locked up in their rooms, not doing anything. A lot of these artists do not require radio play anymore to be popular. They are sending those songs directly to the kids via IG Live, via TikTok. You see a snippet of video. So for example, there's a DJ from Jamaica named TJ who became a big star during COVID without any radio play, just by posting his videos and sending out his songs. So I think in the post-COVID world, we have to go back again to the drawing board to determine what has happened to that generation. It's almost like we are skipping a generation and ignoring those kids who suffered mental anguish, who suffered psychologically during COVID, and they are looking for a sense of belonging, and the gangs are providing that for them. The other thing I would like to mention, there is a landmark case ongoing in the US right now where one of the mass shootings, a young student killed 4 people in a school. His parents are now being held accountable by law and have been charged as being culpable for his actions. They bought him the gun, they ignored the signs and so on. And that will probably set a precedent moving forward in how we deal with some of those extreme cases. And the final thing I would like to say, and I know it sounds a bit old-fashioned, but the society as a whole, including the churches, have absconded their responsibilities. So no longer are priests and pastors and preachers, counselors, and providing some outlet for parents and children to speak and to talk. There's a refuge. Growing up, we had to go to church. It did not mean that you were necessarily religious, but it kept you away from certain activities, and it provided a sense of that belonging that you're looking for. So I think certain sectors of society also have to step in, not just the parents, not just the politicians, but churches have to assume their responsibility. And I am very, very happy to hear the sergeant not say that we are going to try to lock up the kids or law enforcement is going to deal with it, but we are going to try to educate them and educate the parents so we can afford that slippery slope that we're on right now.
Thank you, Mr.
Education is empowerment. Education is empowerment, and I believe
we have an example of it right here, Dr. Bob.
Yes. Yes.
Well, and by the way, speaking of the young male crisis, let me congratulate the West Indies team on a spectacular victory this morning.
Oh yes, most definitely, yes.
Yeah, and that
we needed that. We needed that, right?
We are not producing cricketers. We are not producing good artists anymore. So that is a major boost. I mean, and if you look at social media and the response from everyone across the region, we really, really needed that.
Most definitely.
Yeah, we need it, and perhaps if more of these young people will channel their energies in those areas, because there are a lot of positive things happening in respect of youth.
There is
in the Caribbean, and I believe those stories need to be told. But at the same time, we need to bring along those who are in the throes of that type of gang violence. I mean, wasted lives and families' lives who are upended by the eventual incarceration or the death and murder of these very young lives. So, Sergeant Hippolyte, over to you for some closing comments, sir.
I really like to thank you, Dr. Bob, for the invite, and Mr. Mitchell, an amazing gentleman. Yeah, so who definitely I could see has a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge in such fields and matters. I just want to tell the Grenadian citizens and everybody else who will be watching this show that we cannot give up. We cannot give up on our youth. We need to do as much as we can to save them, to help them make right choices. The community relations branch in St. Lucia, we are bent on this. We are passionate about this. It's not about prosecuting children all the time and taking them to the courts, because lots of them are sometimes just victims of circumstances that were just thrown onto them by adults, sometimes their parents and their neighbors, etc. So we'll continue to do what we can. Parents, adults, there's this online threat is real. Please try your best to, as much as you can,
monitor your children's online activities. Our governments, our leaders understand that this is something that we need to make part of our national agenda. We need to have national campaigns geared at spreading out this message. And the artists, the young men out there you have so much talent, man. You have so much talent. I listen to you guys. You have so much talent. Please, please try your best to use that talent to change the world. You can change the world and make money, make a lot of money while you're doing it. Thank you, Dr.
Sergeant Hippolyte, thank you so much. And, you know, I have to give kudos to law enforcement across the region. You guys are doing a yeoman service. You guys are doing a lot of the work that happens when society fails. So whether it's a teacher fails a student, a parent fails a student, when the home fails a student, law enforcement has to take up the slack, sometimes at great risk. And I don't think people appreciate the important work that you do. And sometimes, yes, mistakes are made, but for the most part, law enforcement does a lot of the work of picking up society's slack. So, you know, it's important that be said as well. So Sergeant Hippolyte, thank you again for appearing on the Bub Report, sir.
Thank you once again. Anytime.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mr. Mitchell, of course, before you go, let us talk about the concert that's happening on the 11th. Speaking of entertainment on music, on February 11th, there is a Calypso event happening. I believe it's the 50. I might be getting the name incorrect here, but I'm subject to correction.
That's okay. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak about it, and thank you for the opportunity to invite Grenadians. It's called Calypso at 50.
Calypso at 50. There we go. Calypso at 50. Yes, go ahead.
So as we celebrate our 50th anniversary of independence, I thought that we should also, and we can agree that Calypso has provided the soundtrack for those 50 years of independence. The influence of Ajamo, the Black Wizard, Inspector, Flying Turkey, and even before them, the original Inspector, Unlucky, Peter Humphrey, and those guys. So I thought that we should have a concert to celebrate the geniuses of our Calypsonians. And so we started to put it together last October, and it has grown in interest. We are doing very well in terms of ticket sales. Even I went up to the Calypso finals last night and meeting people who are excited about the show. It's only $50 in keeping with the theme. We have 13 Calypsonians who are going to do close to 50 songs. My musical director is still on my case about the 50 songs. And incidentally, Dr. Bob, of the 13 Calypsonians who are on the cast, they have among them a total of 63 national titles. But we just added another national title last night because Scholar is on the cast and he won the Independence Calypso competition. So 13 artists on stage at the Calypso at 50 on Sunday the 11th have among them a total of 64 national titles. To me, that's a very, very powerful cast. That's an historic cast. And as a fan, I'm looking forward to it. As a producer of the event, I'm excited to present it. And I'm honored to be able to bring that cluster, that constellation of stars together for one event on Sunday, the 11th of February. We start exactly at 6 p.m. in keeping with the old theme of the Melody Puppeted Calypso semifinals. You know, it started sharp at 5 p.m. So we are going to try to keep some of that.
What was the methodology? And I did see your message around the methodology for coming up on that list of 50 top Grenadian Calypsos and Calypsonians. We'll talk to the public about what methodology informed that list, how you came up with the list.
It's a different project. What I'm doing now is compiling the top 50 songs over the last 50 years. Again, I actually did it at our 40th anniversary of independence, but I was kind of scared to put it out because we can be so critical sometimes as a people. But I saw a Jamaican vlogger who did a similar list, and his disclaimer was, look, this is my opinion, this is how I feel. If you have an idea about a top 50 list, then go ahead and do your list. And I thought, you know what, let me go ahead and do it. So what I did was just starting making notes of songs over the last 50 years and speaking to people who are around them. So for example, Defender in 1978, and the influence of Runaway Church Girl and those songs. And started at number one. To me, number one is obvious, and I hope when it's revealed, people will agree that this is number one song in Grenada over the last 50 years. And try to compile the top 10. I mean, off the top of our heads, we can kind of generally agree what the top 10 songs in Grenada has been over the last 50 years. So after that, then I had to go back to 50 and kind of, so I will do, you know, some at the beginning, some at the end, and kind of bring it to the middle. It took quite some time to do it. I mean, I was critical of myself. Like I went back to the list and said, "Nah, how could you have this song ahead of that song?" You know, I ran it by a couple of people, and they had some input and so on. So I'm excited. I like the idea that people have gravitated towards it. People are anxious to see the remainder of the list. We did have very short criteria. So the criteria is impact of the song at the time of release, the international appeal of the song, and the longevity of the song. Those three items will determine what songs makes the top 50 songs in Grenada over the last, and songs, not necessarily calypsos. So if you notice in the first 10, there are some Sabrina's song is in the first collection, not necessarily a calypso. So I'm excited, and I think on the 6th or the 7th of February we are going to release the top 10. So I'm excited for the continued discussions and debates and the opinions about it. But again, it is just it's not
what kinds of pushback have you been getting? You know, Grenadians are never happy with decisions that are made by judges. For example, last night everyone is saying they give Scholar that, you know, they thief, oh God, oh God. Them judge and them, you know, things like that.
Surprisingly, no pushback. You know, I think people. What I'm happy about is people are appreciative of the effort, and I think if I had just put out at least just name of songs, I think they would have been pushback. But the fact that I took time to do some research, so you have the year the song was released and a couple of lines about the song, why I think that song deserves to be in that position. I think that has kind of reduce the bandwidth for pushback, and people are just excited to see. I think there will be some pushback probably when we get to the top 20. There are some surprises in the top 20. When we get to the top 10, you know, there might be a bit of pushback. But I think people are just appreciative of the effort and the research that went into it.
Well, as long as my favorite Calypsonian is on that list, I'll be fine. I'll be okay.
Well, not Calypsonian. It's song. It's not Calypsonian.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, and there are some Calypsonians. There are some artists who would have more than one song. So yeah, we'll see as the list unfolds. But again, just a gentle reminder to everyone is invited down to the stadium on the 11th of February. Tickets are on sale around the island at goodfair.com. Tickets are only $50. 13 Calypsonians singing some of Grenada's greatest hits. 64 national titles among them. It's going to be a fantastic event. Great food on sale, great drink. You know what I was able to get, Dr. Bob, the original corn soup man who used to be at the Simbun Pavilion during the Melody Papitet semi-final. He's still alive. He's still very active. So he will be there at the National Stadium offering his corn soup for sale.
That's really good. That's really, really good. Outstanding work there, Mr. Mitchell. Dexter, thank you again for appearing on the Bub Report this week. Viewers and listeners, we will take a quick break and come back with our panel segment of the week. Please stand by.
Difficulties you had on that specific day. I mean, the 7th of February, I remembered, in fact, we were in total darkness. In fact, there was some fear around. Very many people were indoors, and we had, again, like you say, with your unique stubbornness, deciding to go ahead with the ceremony. So tell us about that.
Well, yes, this is my way of life. If I had to do something, I will do it by the grace of God. I always call on God's help, by the grace of God. There are so many things that I have done which I would try to recall. But on that particular night, the members of the Grenada United Labour Party, we always have been meeting once a week. It still obtains today. We meet once a week, we pray. We believe in the efficacy, the powerfulness of prayer, and we conducted prayer. We knew that it was going to be a success, that no man on earth could have stopped it, like many other things I've done afterwards, which I will recall. We had it, and of course, the time came 1 minute after midnight, and the flag was hoisted. It was a great moment for me. It was an accomplishment, it was an achievement, and an attainment for Grenada, and we were proud, but we are also thankful, very thankful to the great God who led us on safely through the journey. It was, the waters were rough, very rough, extremely rough, tempestuous as a matter of fact, but we came through very safely. And we are very happy that we were able to bring about independence, because the benefits that have been derived from independence are incalculable. I tell you, from the time we entered the United Nations, Grenada was on top. Grenada was a different country. We were moving from strength to strength.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bub Report. Now, I'm happy to be joined by an esteemed panel of gentlemen. Two of them are part of the subcommittee on history, heritage, and identity, was part of the National Independence Celebrations Committee. And of course, their mandate is to engage the public in public education on the independence theme of one people, one journey, and one future. I'm also joined by Mr. Derek James, who is Grenada's former Diaspora Affairs Ambassador, as well as a member of the St. George Northeast Independence Celebrations Committee. Mr. James, welcome to the Bub Report, sir.
Morning, Mr. Bob, and it's a pleasure being here with you and to see you once again. It's always a pleasure seeing you. Yeah.
Absolutely, and we have Mr. Chris DeRiggs, playwright. Mr. DeRiggs, welcome to the Bub Report, sir.
Good morning, Kellen. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to chatting with you this morning.
Brother Benoit, I believe it's your first time on the program. We have been trying, to get you here, but you finally made it around. So I'm happy to have you here. Maybe I should give you a clap for that.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. It's a pleasure being here, and nice to see that I'm in the company of good friends and old colleagues as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And Chris and so forth. Thanks.
Yes, Mr. James, I have to say retirement looks really good on you, sir.
Thank you very much. I follow my colleague Chris. we are in the farming business. That is what keeps us going.
Very well. Very well. Gentlemen, of course, I want to begin with you, Mr. James. Of course, we're having a conversation today on heritage, identity, and history. But Mr. James, in the context of St. George's Northeast, first and foremost, before we get into what St. George's Northeast is doing on a parish level, on a constituency level, I thought you were a Tong man. How is it you end up in the Northeast? I thought you were a man from River Road.
Well, you know, sometimes you think you know all about someone, eh? So, well, actually, I was born in the Bolio, to be exact, in the Stone, in Bolio, what some people call it Bonef. And I lived there when I was 3 years, and I moved to River Road to stay with my grandmother. So all my brothers and sisters, except 2 who born in Trinidad, we all came from the Stone, from Bolio. So I am truly a Northeast person.
You are a Northeast person. Okay, well, thank you for that information, because I was not aware of that at all. You know, sometimes they say you think you know people.
Well, you know what, Kellen? So, part of that program, you will see a lot of people who will be part of that program who will be honored at that night. You will realize that you wouldn't even know that they were from the Northeast. So it's also education.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, a part of the committee, what has the constituency been doing in respect of celebrating Grenada's 50th anniversary of independence?
Well, we are just concentrating. This committee was an ad hoc committee that was put together since May, after the funeral of one of our honorees. We had to sit down in Spice Basket, and the question was asked, what could we do to celebrate independence? And the idea came up to honor some people from the Northeast. So this committee is not a part of any other committee from the Northeast putting together the celebration of this independence. We are solely concentrating on this award ceremony to recognize people from the Northeast who have contributed significantly to the development of the Northeast and Grenada in general. And we were looking at other activities, but that right now for today, we are looking at the award ceremony. So it has nothing to do with whatever committee or other committee that they may have to celebrate and decorate the Northeast and so on.
Right. Okay. So that is a committee that was put together by people in the community in respect of celebrating the accomplishment of citizens in that area. And of course, I suspect that the contributions to Grenada as well. So that event, St. George Northeast 50-50 Independence Celebrations Committee, you guys will be having an emulation ceremony for 50 of our sons and daughters. How did you come up with the list?
Well, what we did is we placed boxes in most villages throughout the Northeast, including some part of St. Paul's. As you know, the left-hand side going up St. Paul's Main Road is part of the Northeast. So we placed boxes, suggestion boxes in all these places, in shops, and we advertised it on the radio and on Facebook. And so people would know that they have a right to make nominations. Then we had some people who was responsible for different areas, the different areas that we have selected to recognize people in. We had people responsible for those areas, and part of their responsibility was to go out in the community and discuss with the community people who they think would be good leaders or good persons to be recognized. And the end result we got is unbelievable. The support that we got, the suggestion we got was overwhelming. And the committee sat down, looked at them, and came up with the 50. And I would say that it was not an easy feat to do that. It was, I mean, all the persons who were recognized, all the people who were suggested, they are deserving of an award. They are deserving to be recognized. But we just had to come up with 50, which really was a difficult task to make the final list.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that event is happening on the 2nd of February, February 2nd, and it starts at 6:30 p.m. Of course, there is no admissions fee. At Spice Basket, of course, we know who built the Spice Basket. He's a man from the Northeast, the mighty Manikou, my former boss, Mr. Hugh Dolland. He's using his facilities there for that. What types of cultural activities would also inform that event?
We have Steelman music, of course, from Kman6ixx, who is from the Northeast. Their home is in the Northeast, as I said earlier, the left-hand side of St. Paul's. We have a school choir. I shouldn't say a school. Different schools in the constituency. We bring in students from all the different areas of the constituency to come together. It's not a particular school choir, but taking one or two students from all the primary schools in the constituency, bring them together, and they will do some performance for us at that night. And then we have some soloists, and there's not much to say of anything like that, because as you know, it will take a doing to complete and honor these 50 persons. So we have some cultural event. We end the evening with fireworks. So you know, it's a long night. That's why we're starting at 6:30. We hope to end it within a short time possible, so that we could get people to go elsewhere to continue celebrating, or even to stay there, because we will end it with a band, music, dancing, and eating, and so on.
That sounds really, really good. It sucks to be me right now, because I will not be in Grenada for any of these activities. Now, let us talk about, of course, today you have the Pan on the Sand event. You are a lover of Pan, I know this, and of course, in retirement, you continue to do that work of public service. Talk to us about the Pan on the Sand event later today.
Well, that event takes place, as you rightly stated, this afternoon. It starts at 4 p.m. and it will be held at the opposite the vendors market on Grandlands Beach. And we expect to have, or we will have 7 steel bands playing music from all the way up to from St. Andrew to St. George's, and even in the parish of St. John. What we expect to do at the end of it, we expect to give a special treat with the bands will come together and make a presentation to the public. So I urge people that when they come down there this afternoon to stay to the end, because the end will be a treat that will be a good surprise and something good for everybody to see and witness. And this is the 3rd time we have been Pan in the Sand, but this is the second time around independence. So we tried to change it last year to bring it close enough to independence to be part of the celebrations. And as you know, this is 50 years, so we really expect this one to be a good one. We want to say thanks to all of our sponsors, the GTA and also the Spice Mask Corporation and so on, for coming up and helping us to make this event what it will be this afternoon.
We have a quick comment here. Lydia James is saying, my God, he looks like his sister Judy Bad. And she also said, I used to be in their home in River Road. Janice's sister was my schoolmate and good friend.
Yes, good to see Lydia. Good to hear from her. So good morning, Lydia. But we're doing well with all what we're doing in Grenada. I'm trying my best to do what I can for all the communities that I lived in. I lived in Bolio, as I said, doing what I could do in Bolio. I live in River Road. Right now, I'm doing some work in River Road to help in the cleanup of the community. And right now, I live in Lansapine, and I'm doing some work here in Lansapine to help in the development. So it's all about community work to help people. And I think all of us who have the opportunity and the ability to do something for our community, we must do it, because this is not about a particular government or this government or that government. All of us as Grenadians have a right and should do what we can do for the development of our country.
Very important note on which to end on, Mr. James. Thank you again for appearing. I know that you have to run on to organize with Pan in the Sand, so thank you again. And as a reminder to our viewers and listeners, for those of you who want to check out the activities that will be taking place at the Spice Basket on February 2nd, it's called it's a recognition of 50 of the sons and daughters of the St. George Northeast constituency, and it starts at 6:30 p.m. on February 2nd, 2024. So, Mr. James, thank you again.
Thank you, and it's important to tell all the listeners who want to come, it's a free event. It's a free event.
And the event is also free. Very well. Thank you, Mr. James.
Kenan, thanks for the time, and all the best to you. And let me say happy independence to all listeners, and to my good friends Chris and Oliver. And to you, Kenan, happy independence, where we celebrate 50 with flying colors.
Absolutely. Very well.
Nice
okay. Absolutely. All right. So we are left with Brother Chris and Brother Oliver. Happy independence. Are you in the spirit of independence, that spirit of pride and patriotism, gentlemen?
Well, I don't know how Oliver feels, but I'm a bit tired this morning because I went to St. Patrick's, to Sotez,
yes,
to see that National Calypso Independence Finals, and I agree it was a well done, well produced event, and the songs were well thought out, and I was impressed, and I also want to join in congratulating a scholar for winning. So this morning I'm a little tired, but I think with justification, it was an independence event that sapped my energy. Yes.
Dr. Benoit, did you also have a chance to check out the events, the Calypso show last night?
No, I didn't have the chance to do that last night because we had an activity in the St. Paul's area, which is actually leading up to the big event on the 4th, the St. Paul's Extravaganza, which is actually part of the entire celebrations of the 50th anniversary. So I spend most of my time there. So, and then plus other work to be done, which really had me busy. You know, a number of activities coming up. That I'm also involved in the planning of a exhibition, art exhibition, which would actually open on the 17th of February as well. So a lot of activities, you know. So, yes.
Gentlemen, you are part of a very important subcommittee. We cannot discuss independence without discussing heritage, without discussing our history and how we see ourselves in respect of identity formation. First and foremost, talk to us about the public education mandate of your committee and the work that you have been doing so far in just getting the word out in respect of Grenada's history and heritage.
I think I'll let Dr. Benoit lead off on this.
Yes. Okay, well, the way I like to start, Dr. Bob, is to really say that the whole question of culture, identity, and heritage is in fact very important. And if I could say, following on from the previous two speakers earlier on, from St. Lucia and Dexter as well, they've made very important points concerning the state of Grenada's culture today. And I want to go back to your opening comments where you mentioned the question of the Federation and even what Gordon Lewis described in the Caribbean during that period of time. That has relevance to where we see Grenada is today, and indeed the entire Caribbean. I would probably want to say that in dealing with the question of heritage and identity, it takes leaders in the society. We live in a society where it cannot just happen by itself, and a lot of things seems to be happening by itself without the proper guidance and leadership and so on. And when I talk about the leadership, I'm thinking of the political elite, the intellectual and artistic elite, as well as the economic elite and so forth. If we don't have a solid group of people leading that process, society could in fact generate into problems. And this is what we have seen over the last 50 years. And I probably would say, I don't want to be in a position of blaming any particular group, but is what we fail to do. And what we fail to do might actually be connected to the colonial heritage as well. And the question of identity is so important. And the question of heritage, again, we have failed in many respects to document most of our history and heritage. And in fact, the committee's role is to do just that. And this is a longer process than just the celebrations today. We will continue even after independence to try to develop that whole approach of how do we deal with those issues that confront us today. And the way to do it is by looking back at some of the problems and so forth. And we've seen the problem expressed today as discussed earlier on, and that's where we have to begin. So the question here is about who are we as Grenadians? I think that needs to be defined carefully, and we need to understand how we want to pursue that issue of identity and so on. But it relates to culture. And if we could identify different aspects of culture, and I guess we're going to get to that point, yes, we have developed some aspects of our culture, but a lot has not been done. And that's really the focus. And and as was said earlier on, the question of education is so important. And education is not just the nature of the school system we have today, but really trying to structure education around, and culture is education, right? Culture is education. And we want to think of culture in the broader sense. And we want to not just limit ourselves to think of just cultural expressions of different activities and so on, but think because we are a cultural being, and we want to develop that as broad as possible so we can eventually solve some of the problems that we are facing today. And this is not just a one-off thing. This is, in fact, going back to where we think we have not developed. And I mean, there's a lot more to say on this, but I would like, for the questions, and Chris could come in on a different aspect of it, and then we can expand some of the debate on this around these issues.
Brother D-Riggs, why do you think we have failed in respect of adequately really documenting ourselves, documenting our history, documenting our heritage in such a way as it would be efficiently transmitted to a next generation, the new generation of Grenadians who can say, you know what, these aspects of are aspects of my Grenadian identity that I can confidently speak to. You speak to a South Korean child, they can tell you about the mythologies of their history. You speak to a child from China, they can do the same thing. Unfortunately for us, in many respects, you ask the average Grenadian child about the intricacies involved in the Grenada Revolution, or even the 1951 Sky Red events, they're unable to articulate any of that.
Well, from where I sit, I come from angles outside of just the whole framework for the celebrations of the 50th anniversary. As you know, I have a long association and involvement with theater in Grenada, and one of our core missions was to write and tell our own stories, giving proud visibility to our own stories. I am also the chairman of the Cultural Foundation, and we are in the process of finalizing a new strategic plan. And one essential element of that is documenting and giving visibility to our intangible heritage, which has been so suppressed and ignored. And like my colleague Dr. Benoit, I believe that we need to look back. We're talking about independence, and we're talking about self-discovery. And it's a process. It's not a static place that you arrive at. The whole defining who we are, what constitutes our Grenadianness, involves looking back at past civilizations, whether it is the Kalinago civilization or the the colonial slave society that our foreparents lived in. The period, subsequently with the struggle for decolonization, and other events that take us up to the present situation. The problem, you asked the question, Dr. Bob, why is it that people do not know? Or, I think it has to do with the fact that the Kalinagos didn't really write books, as we know today in the context of printed publications and so on. And certainly our ancestors were not afforded the opportunity to develop literary skills. So a lot of, the stories of the past civilization have been passed on in a fairly verbal way, oral traditions and so on. And part of the challenge we face now is to unearth and document and give visibility to those aspects of our history which really define us and tell us who we are, our ethnic origins, our cultural traditions, and so on. And I identify with the attempt to correct a historical problem, the whole process of re-education. And it is not just the responsibility of people in formal institutions like teachers in schools, but there needs to be some national coalition to help to define Grenadianness, help to document and give visibility to our cultural traditions, and the things that really are important in sustaining us in the current dispensation where, as the previous panelists were talking about, they're saying that, and you, Dr. Bob, in your initial in your introduction, you spoke about what really independence is. We are being buffeted by global, forces that really deprive us of the critical mass and the power that we need to really assert ourselves and so on. And so when we talk of independence, we're looking at self-determination and these kinds of things. We look at our domestic systems of governance and decision making and so on. But it's a process of self-assertion, and it's a lot that we have to deal with. But it starts with looking at who you are and drawing strength from what really has sustained our Grenadian society and what constitutes sources of resilience as a Grenadian people. So I don't know if what I've said makes sense in the context of the discussion.
No, it absolutely makes a lot of sense. And in respect of the initial, I suppose, reception to the work that your subcommittee is doing, Dr. Benoit, what's that looking like? The reaction from the public? How are people responding?
Well, people are actually see the work that we're trying to do as very important. We have reports from time to time about the lack of, we did not know this and that sort of stuff. They're responding to some of the discussions that we've undertaken so far in terms of saying, yes, these are things that are lacking. And in fact, I'm glad to see that we are taking on the whole idea of, talking and documenting history, trying to identify historic sites that we should recognize, which we have not done in any organized way up to this point. But I think one of the more important points is to say that leadership of this process is so important. When I say leadership, I'm thinking of what we have ignored over the years is probably whether it's the role of artists and intellectuals in the entire process, and including government taking a more proactive approach towards the preservation of culture and actually cultural development. And in fact, we are now even thinking of some of the infrastructure that is necessary for development of culture and heritage. But I also want to say too that as we consider some of the problems that we have in society, we have to rethink also what we consider to be moral education. And moral education in this sense is how do you, even at a young age within the school system, how do you make Grenada paramount in any form of discussion and education, even at the level of students. In the past, moral education might have meant something different, but no, we have to take a different approach to moral education, whereby the children learn respect for the country and respect for others in society. And that is probably the issue that we face now with, as was discussed earlier on, with so many of our youth. And it is not an easy solution. We have to continue to really develop that moral education for schools, and hopefully in the next 50 years we can see some changes.
And speaking of education in schools, Chris, recently a decision was made to reintroduce Grenadian history in the school system. I'm sure that's a decision that you probably celebrated and welcomed. But does that go far enough, having just one textbook in the context of Grenadian education in schools, Grenadian history in schools? Does that go far enough? What are you hoping to see in the furtherance of that development? And what role do you envision your committee playing in that respect?
Well, I think that the decision to introduce Grenadian history in a formal way in our curriculum is a very good one. One of the things I lament over the years, I've lamented over the years, is the absence. I did not get the opportunity to be taught Grenadian history, whether this was in primary school or secondary school level. And all the Grenadian history I know, well, 90% of it, I learned on the basis of my own curiosity, pulling the books, doing my own research. I'm glad now that, there's a kind of upsurge in the research and publication, and that formal introduction of Grenadian history is a great development. But as you have pointed out, it's a foundation. It's not far enough. Here's what I would like to see. I'd like to right now there's a kind of renaissance of Grenadian writing. Maybe it's not a renaissance because we never experienced it before in such intensity, but there are, I would say, a couple of hundred books that have been written by Grenadians in the last 20 years. And I would like to see in the year 2024, in the 50th year of independence, that, my subcommittee and the wider committee go into the schools in a formal way and encourage students, working in collaboration with teachers, with the Ministry of Education, encourage students to read the works of Grenadian writers. I would like to see a challenge being laid down to every single Grenadian student to read at least one Grenadian book, one book written by a Grenadian writer in the year 2024. We can go beyond that. We can even, have what you call an extreme challenge, to challenge those who are oriented towards literature to actually read 50 Grenadian books in the year of the 50th anniversary. In other words, I think there's room for practical initiatives that go beyond just the formal introduction of Grenadian history. I think there needs to be an activist, organized intervention on the part of all of us who form the subcommittee and who are part of this thing, to engage in a collaborative way to really challenge the students, bring it home to them, bring the books to them, challenge them to read, let them read each one of them a Grenadian book in the year 2024, and maybe there we can actually have the extreme challenge and so on. And of course, there are other things happening, the concept of the mobile museum, because not just, reading text, it's also being exposed to visual evidence of our history and heritage. And that is part of it. There was talk before about a mobile library and so on. We need to sort of consolidate that sort of thing to extend reading beyond the schools, but into the community. We are looking towards adults and parents and people doing parenting to lead the way and teach us to lead the way. Some of them don't even read Grenadian books. So you have to take that in a practical way.
I'm glad you said that.
Right, to the community. So there's a lot of room for activist intervention in the year 2024 in our Golden Jubilee scenario. Yeah.
And I'm glad you said this, Dr. Benoit. Is there anything else you wish to add to what Chris just articulated here?
Well, I think what Chris has said really make the point as clear as possible, because we are writing and we have put out stuff out there, and how do you really break it down to the point where you could have students reading those work and taking from those work. But more importantly, not just a question of reading those work. These are the work that sometimes spend years doing research and peer-reviewed work and so on. So there's some value to it. So how do we use that information for the development of society? And I think that's very important. You cannot afford to ignore the work that people have done on Grenada to that extent. So I think that's a very important point, and there must be some structure in place to make this happen.
And Chris, you really inspired me here to dig into my library quickly in respect of. So this is just part of. I'm looking at my bookshelf. I have about another 10 Grenadian books. But the point is, these are works written by all Grenadian authors.
Right.
All of them. You have Grenada Island of Conflict by the late George Brizan, Forward Ever, Journey to a New Grenada, Bernard Cord, Operation Desert Rat, Kman6ixx Barnett, the assassination of Morris Bishop, Steve Clark. Then you have Morris Bishop Speaks, the Grenada Revolution and its overthrow, 1979 to 1983. And then you have Skyred. The point I'm making is we have so much work, because of course we have Dr. Wendy Grenada, who is the chair of your subcommittee, the Grenada Revolution. We have a wealth. We are rich in publishers. We are rich in authors. We are rich in the people, the late Beverly Steele and others, who have been telling our history. But there appears to be a disconnect with what they have been telling in books and the transmission of that history. How do we transmit that history to a younger generation? You mentioned the mobile museum, for example, which is great, but there has to be a reimagining in respect of how that history is transmitted to the next generation. Your thoughts, gentlemen?
Can I say something here?
Yes, go ahead, Chris. Yes.
All the books you have mentioned there are social, political analysis, yes, and have that kind of common thread in terms of the genre of writing. I want to encourage Grenadians to read for fun also, not just to read and unravel the thread of our history, which these books I'm sure are doing an excellent job of doing. But I want to see them read the works of Moll Collins, of Jacob Ross, Dr. Wendy Crawford, and others. There's a gentleman called David Ambrose, who is one of the senior faculty at Kman6ixx. He has made it a crusade, a mission to give visibility to the works of Grenadian writers. And he, conducts these exhibitions, these fairs, these pop-up book fairs all over the place. And he is doing a human service to some of the things we want to see done. And he's doing it on his own volition. I don't think he's been funded, right? But he works within the context of a community of writers. And so I want to encourage people to read Grenadian literary works that are exciting to read and are being read for fun. And I think, that is because what is the subject matter of, the writings of these literary writers? It is Grenadian folklore.
Yeah.
It is a very Grenadian history we're talking about. So in a kind of backhanded way, we are bringing them back to Grenadian history, even by reading for fun and reading the literary works. But I commend you, Dr. Bob, for that impressive collection. You should see mine.
Yeah, that's just part of it. That's just part of it, and it's because,
yes,
and
yes,
I have to credit because I grew up with old people, right? And like you, Chris, I did not find out about Skyred in the formal education system. I did not know who Dame Hilda Biner was from the formal education system, or who Leo de Gale was, or the challenges that led up to Grenada between 1973 or 1974. You know who I learned that from? My grandmother, the late Wilfina Williams, who would tell me stories of her experiences as a child, being the daughter of an estate worker on Guava Estate in St. John, who told me the stories of what she remembered of the Skyred incidents when her parents were advocated for by Sir Eric Gary at the time, and she remembered when the estates were being burnt and so on and so on and so forth. So a lot of what you said there is actually accurate in respect of that oral tradition. That oral tradition is such a powerful part of the Grenadian experience.
Yeah, Dr. Ball, just let me add also too that the work of the Grenada Writers Association and all the other works, whether it is theater or the visual arts, is all parcel of culture development. And the problem that we face, even as Chris was saying, how do we get people to read those work, or even urging people to read those work? It's much broader in that sense, that we have to create the atmosphere and the conditions for that level of education. And we must have leadership in that sense. And this is really the problem that we are facing now. And in fact, this is what makes the committee's task even more important, because we are basically trying to shift that kind of, thinking in Grenada to one where you take from books, you take from theater, you take from the visual arts and so forth. So it's an entire new process that we're really trying to develop in this case.
Absolutely. And we have a viewer comment is saying, in my opinion, the reason our history is not documented is because governments change, funds for those activities are reduced or removed, and this can be frustrating and discouraging to individuals. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think, and that's a very important point. The arts and culture got to be funded. In all countries, we see at least some fund going to that process. We may not have put sufficient resources into cultural development in the past. I mean, for one reason, we are right here now, probably not. We need, for example, a national theater. We need a national art gallery. And we need those cultural centers where writing and discussion about the various work can take place on a regular basis. I mean, the Writers Association, in that sense, we would like to see, and I think is very important, whereby there are forums where you could have a reading taking place, say every evening, where people can go to and so on, and talk about those issues, not just among a small group of people, but broaden it to the larger population. And those are some of the issues I believe that we have to embrace.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Chris?
Yes, but even going deeper than that and further back, the history is written by the people who win. The victors are the ones who write history. So I've often been told by, as a professor of mine who said, imagine what the history of Europe would have looked like if Hitler had won the Second World War. And that's an important question, because a lot of our history has been written through the lens of our former colonial masters. And so we have to rebalance and correct that. So governments, coming in the period, the post-independence and the post-statehood period, it is true they have paid a lot of lip service to culture and history and identity, right? And it really, now that, there seems to be a renewed interest, a kind of awakening that is happening with respect to the creative arts and so on. It's a good time to beat this drum hard, right? So that Oliver is speaking about a state-of-the-art facility for performances. We're talking about that for decades, right? Nobody ain't doing it, right? The question is, who is serious about putting their money where their mouth is or walking the walk? And I think this is a great opportunity in the context of the new awareness to push those kinds of initiatives, right? But we have to understand that we have to assort and organize for these things to happen. Bearing in mind where we're coming from, a suppressed history, a history written by the people who won, or colonizers and so on. And right now, we have to sort of encourage this wellspring, this surge in Grenadianness, and a sense of where we can go with optimism going forward, right? So it's a good time, you know, and I'm very encouraged, you know, that, you know, right now we could do a lot in the 50th anniversary to bring our stories, our documented history to the people who are going to form the young generation. Well, who are the young generation who will form leadership? I listened to that conversation earlier on this morning. The gentleman from Lucia and Dexter. Listen, we need to tell positive stories to our young people, you know. We need to encourage them to feel empowered, that they can achieve and do things. Right? And that is what we need to do when we do theater in Grenada, when we sing our songs or calypsos. We need to be telling people that, look, the future is yours. Straddle the world. You can go forward and achieve. West Indies team with 7 new uncapped players went and beat the mighty Australia. The Caribbean civilization is a crystallization of some of the best of generations. We have survived the Middle Passage. We can go forward and achieve a lot, and we need to empower young people with positive enforcement about their possibilities and the future. Sorry to be preaching like that, but I feel strongly about these things.
No. And you know, I have to say this: people like yourself, Francis Urias Peters, the late Auntie Tech, the late Derek Clouden, the Gale brothers from the Gale brother from Tumda, who was a poet, Steel Pan, you know, all of these are cultural expressions. Guide young people in a positive direction for the most part, and I think giving that institutional support to these things is so critical, because there are positive stories, and perhaps how we can use theater. You know, you use theater to transmit our cultural heritage in such creative ways, and that must also be celebrated as well. You know, so I'm glad you mentioned that. But let us talk, gentlemen, about the public education town hall meetings that will be happening. There is one that will be happening on Wednesday, the 31st of January, as well as another on the 1st of February, one happening at the GBSS Auditorium, the other happening at the Deluxe Cinema in Grenville. And it will be an opportunity for Grenadians to reflect on what independence means to us and to propose ideas for the way forward. Let's talk Grenada. Come one, come all. Gentlemen, let us talk about these 2 public education town hall meetings that will be happening. All of it, Dr. Benoit?
Yes. Well, it's important going into the communities, listening to people, hearing their voices and so on, because this is a process that must be done, you know, by engaging people's ideas and so forth. So the whole idea is to, you know, talk about the past, independence, what it means, what people have to say about it, and try to use their words in a way to really continue to, you know, to express the whole ideas of independence to them, and also listening to them. You know, one of the things that we need to do much more is listen to people, because I believe that there's a situation in Grenada sometimes where people are not listened to sufficiently. People want to be engaged. People want to participate in some of those activities and able to say that I am part of this, I am responsible for shaping Grenada's future. And I think the only way to do that is to listen and to hear what people want and see how we can address those issues that people are raising, because these are people, you know, we have had experience living in Grenada and living what Grenada is. And I believe we cannot, you know, we need to pay attention to the people, basically.
Chris?
Yes, and voices from within. I think that's the theme of these consultations. Very appropriate theme. We need to hear people speaking from the gut, the thoughts coming from the belly of the Grenadian community, And this is a fundamental principle of governance. And governance is not just the remit of people who are elected every 5 years. Governance is an ongoing engagement. It's about partnership, and it's about listening, as Dr. Benoit has said. Think back to the period of the revolution. For all its flaws, introduced the whole practice of people's participatory democracy. And that was a forum for knowing exactly how people felt with respect to social and economic projects. And many good ideas came from that forum. So we need to, in the current dispensation, understand that governance is not the sole remit of people who are elected to sit in parliament, but there must be filters, avenues, reservoirs that for information that can help to guide the Grenadian civilization forward. And so these town hall meetings are important. And my hope is that the ideas that are harvested and it become a kind of guide for future initiatives that people can take ownership of. So the farmer in the community, the ordinary school boy or girl will feel a sense of ownership of what is put forward as a kind of blueprint for the way forward in terms of many of the issues that are on the table, because I'm sure people are not going to discuss purely cultural issues and so on. They will want to speak about other questions that are on their hearts. So yes, let's push forward with this community engagement, voices from within.
And
great thing.
Yeah, and Dr. Bob, I think
Benoit?
I think it's also important to stress two things. One, that respect of people is important, respect, and also understanding that dignity is important to all people. And I think what we have to do, and I think the way I see it is that we need to put Grenada first. Yes, there have people who have individual ambitions, but let's hope that it does not get beyond ourselves, and that Grenada is the focus here. And in order to make Grenada the focus, you must listen to people and respect people's opinion, ideas, and so on. I mean, our role basically is to provide some sort of guidance to say, okay, this is possible, this is not possible, because there's so many, issues that would affect our way we do our work, but we have to be able to say Grenada first, and therefore let's take that approach.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And now we have a comment here. We have some comments coming in, and I'll get to those. Nicole James Phillip is saying it will be tough to get the youthful generation to pick up a book. Other innovative ways to get the knowledge across to where they are is necessary. Gentlemen, that's a challenge to you all.
Well, I think, all right, you're going to go?
Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, this has always been raised. And this is why I begin that we have to start with education in all forms. Listen, theater is a form of education. Going to an art gallery is a form of education. And, I envision, for example, amphitheaters even spreading around the country, whereby we can get people to play different roles. In fact, if you have to perform a role, you got to read. We have to find ways of incorporating, technology, as was said. These things are all important and so on. So it's not that, and even when we start thinking of developing libraries, even community libraries, you want to bring in technology in order to aid reading and that sort of stuff. And reading can be fun. It's just a question of how we do it. And that's a kind of leadership I hope that we could provide. But again, I'm saying there could be competition that will take place for different activities. You know, we have a number of festivals taking place. You know, the opportunities to do a lot of other cultural things around the country. You must read in order to even create a calypso, for that matter. These are all aspects of the development of culture that we're talking about. We just have to find the creative ways of doing it.
Here are my thoughts.
Yes.
You know, when we want, or my parents want me to eat my vegetables, she gave me an incentive. Okay. So if I eat the lettuce, and I used to think it was rabbit food, right? If I eat the lettuce, I get so much meat. You know, we have to find creative ways of giving incentives to, especially the very young people, to read. And it is true, reading can be fun. A lot depends on the type of books you give them to read. So you don't give a first grader a book to read that is beyond his or her level. You choose very carefully the material you give them to read. You walk into this arrangement a responsibility to do a review. So it is no longer up to the volition or moods and attitudes of the young student to decide whether or not I will read. The book is put as part of the curriculum. Or, you know, it may not be the formally laid down book list, but it's part of the literary aspect of the curriculum. So here, class, we are going to read this book, which is about maybe 30 pages long. I want you to do a book report on it. You do that, and you do another book after another time. And so there is a kind of graduated process that is organized and in a formal way that mandates the young student to read and come back with responses. This is a very maybe surreptitious way of working it into the student, the culture of the school curriculum. One other thing that can be, we have to bear in mind also, technology has changed. And so we have to look at the digital methods of accessing books. And you have to, you know, take into consideration that the generation, the new generation that we're dealing with are in that space. So you also have to try to reach them in that space where they're operating from. And to the extent that you can take them to the theater to see plays, and it is happening now, not just for the theater art students, but it's happening with other students. There are some teachers at secondary school level in particular who have embraced a certain responsibility to make sure their students come to the theater, and having them do reviews of plays and so on. So that is, you know, it's a way of getting people involved in the habit of reading and analyzing, and it can be done. And I'm not pessimistic. I think it's a question of carefully thinking out how we engage with these young people to get them to start reading.
In your own experience, from your own lived experience with your own theater, were there young people that came in to your theater being blissfully unaware of elements of Grenadian history who are now into a new sense of awareness around some of the themes that come out in your plays?
Julian Fedon. Fedon Revolution, 1795 to 1796. A very exciting chapter in Grenada's march towards independence in the anti-colonial struggle. That play was 2 hours long plus. When I wrote it, I had apprehensions as to whether or not students will find it interesting or boring. We were able to make an exciting production using costumes, but first of all, based on excellent acting, but making it a very attractive visual experience for people coming into the theater. So the costumes were imported from North America. You know, the military costumes of the French rebels in the 1790s and so on. We try to recreate in the sets a feeling of a plantation, great house look, things that will take people back into that kind of time and space. Students came to see that play in the hundreds. When I last checked, there were over 800 students from about 6 or 7 secondary schools who came to see the play. And the response was overwhelming. The last play we did was called Fire to Dance. And that play captured an era in Grenada's history also, but more recently. And again, the response by students was overwhelming. So the students, they love a good story. And whether you're old, like 90-something, or you're young, like 10 years, you like a good story. Yeah. So the challenge, first and foremost, is we when they pick up their Facebook and they're reading and stuff and so on, the stories, a lot of the stories, some of the stories are not so well told, right? And may not be very uplifting as we are concerned about that. But it's all about stories. So you tell a good story, and that's the first responsibility. And whether you're young or you're old as the hills, right? Once a good story is being told, that's where you start. And I'm very happy to see how the students have responded, and a lot so with the help of the theater arts students and the English B theater arts teachers and the English B teachers. They were on board, but principals, there are a number of principals who I'm so impressed with the way they have embraced this thing. So yes, it can happen, and it is happening.
Dr. Benoit, anything else you wish to add?
Well, I endorse everything that Chris has said in that regard. I believe also that, and one of the things I really want to stress is having the infrastructure to make some of these things happen. We must build institutions around culture, strong institutions around culture, if we are to continue along those lines. It cannot happen, vike way. We have to have those solid institutions and support. And it's nice to see that Grenada seems to be waking up to the importance of culture and identity and heritage and so forth. So to me, this is good news. Let's hope we can keep it up.
Absolutely. Let us now get to some other viewer comments here. And I do believe that good storytelling has the ability to, because my grandmother was a very good storyteller. Now, obviously, as I got older, I had to obviously verify a lot of the claims that she made, but the fact is she's the one that introduced me to a lot of that history that I would not have been aware of. Let's get to some comments. Ernesto is saying, seeing signs of patriotism in Grenada leading up to a 50th independence celebration, it takes me back to the days of the Revo when we volunteered our time on weekends to clean, build communities, community centers, etc. And seeing how this demonstrates beautifying communities, as one family tells us, we come together to show how we can move mountains as a united people. And of course, I hope that a lot of the people can also attend the public town hall meetings as well as part of the 50th celebrations. Rosamond Jags is saying, Grenadian books I read, I Woke at Dawn by Dame Hilda Bino, Forts and Coastal Batteries of Grenada by Michael Jessame, Survival for Service, Paul Schoon's Unforgettable Past. Survival for Service by Michael Jessame, I believe. Paul Schoon's Grenada's Unforgettable Past by Randolph Mark, and Purple Blues by Esther O'Neill. So another set of Grenadian authors here. Onesto is also talking about a young man who was a part of the Agriculture Forum, in which I believe that's Chris DeRiggs, he's saying that that's your son. I do not have a clipping of that. I believe it's probably a poem, but I'm certainly going to look for that. Margaret Francis, good morning, Margaret. Well, it's still morning here in the US. Margaret, better yet, start a book club. Margaret, we have been talking about starting this book club on the Bub Report. I think this 50th independence anniversary gives us an opportunity to do that, because you have tons of Grenadian authors out there, including one of my friends in Miami who also just recently wrote a book on Grenada. That's Mr. Raymond Penny from Boca. Yeah, I think that's it. So, gentlemen, what we will do, we will take a quick break, and we will come back to give you an opportunity for some closing. And viewers and listeners, welcome back to the Bub Report. As a reminder, the subcommittee on history, let me make sure that I'm getting the name correct here. It is let me pull it up here. Right, there we go. The Subcommittee on History, Identity, Heritage, and Documentation, which is a subcommittee of the National Independence Celebrations Committee. They are inviting the public to a series of public education town hall meetings, which would be informed by the theme of Grenada's independence. And of course, it will be an opportunity for Grenadians to reflect on what independence means to us and to propose ideas for the way forward. Let's talk Grenada, come one and all. Dr. Benoit and Mr. Diriggs, it's always a pleasure having you here, gentlemen. And so I'm going to go over to you for some closing comments as we end today's edition of the Bub Report. Who wants to go first?
Okay. I would probably want to say one people, one journey, one future is an important statement going forward in Grenada, but we have to make it meaningful to people and build the necessary institutions around all aspects of culture so that it can be strong and deliver what we want for Grenada over the next 50 years.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Chris?
Well, I want to close on a note of recognizing the contribution of Clyde Belfon, a writer who passed away in recent weeks, a very gifted, talented writer. And we must, as part of what we're doing, hold up and emulate the great writers from Grenada. So Clyde has made his mark, and I want to honor his memory at this point in time. And I also want to thank you, Dr. Bob, for this opportunity to share with you and all listeners our ideas with regard to the 50th anniversary and dealing with issues of history and identity. As I said from the beginning, this is a self-discovery process. It's not a static arrival to a fixed destination. Mm-hmm. We will, in the process of going forward, find out who we are in greater measure. And we need to build on the things that have represented the best of our Grenadianness. I look forward to a shared, united commitment of people from all different shades and grades, right, to this ideology of building our Grenadianness. And the 50th anniversary locates us in a good time and place to press this agenda. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for the work that you continue to do. And I trust that the Grenadian community, those who are passionate about what it means to be Grenadian or Grenadianism, attend the event, but not only attend the event, bring your nieces and your nephews. It should not only be an event for your nenens and your parents and your aunties, but your nieces and nephews in high schools should be at that activity as well. So, gentlemen, thank you for appearing on the Bub Report this week. Now, viewers and listeners, we are going to leave you with scenes from the St. Patrick's last evening, where Finley Jeffrey, the scholar, capped the Independence Calypso monarch in his home parish of St. Patrick, which of course has the designation of being Grenada's historic parish, and also has the designation of being Crown City. On behalf of the producers of the Bub Report, I'm Dr. Kellen Bub, wishing you all a wonderful week ahead. And of course, do go out there and enjoy the various independence activities that are taking place in celebration of Grenada's Golden Jubilee. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
All together we are 50 crumb. Tonight I'm making it 51. Mommy. Hey, mommy. Oh no, let me see. I am a messenger, and that's what I'll say to them. Give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She's only 15. Oh, give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She just reached half a century. Sing for Grenada, for homeland forever. They run them out. They say Grenada is a waste of time. They cast the doubt. They say that the country is in decline. Since 74, and it's like she don't really go nowhere. In fact, they know that she has been in reverse since that day. But I am her son, a devoted one. With me rod and staff, I'm here on her behalf, just to issue a simple message. Exercise some restraint. I want all our children hold some strength. Please hold some strength. Give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She's only 15. Give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She just reached half a century. She's still young. All together we are 50 crumb. Tonight I'm making it 51. Mommy. Hey, mommy. Oh no, let me see. I am a messenger, and that's what I'll say to them. Give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She's only 15. Oh, give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She just reached half a century. Sing for Grenada, for homeland forever. They run them out. They say Grenada is a waste of time. They cast the doubt. They say that the country is in decline. Since 74, and it's like she don't really go nowhere. In fact, they know that she has been in reverse since that day. But I am her son, a devoted one. With me rod and staff, I'm here on her behalf, just to issue a simple message. Exercise some restraint. I want all our children hold some strength. Please hold some strength. Give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She's only 15. Give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She just reached half a century. She's still young, cause many others who are a seniors, they all modern road, they in stagnant mode, man they see in a a lot of trouble. Financially they are unstable. Before you criticize her, please consider. She faced rebel, bomb blast and burn, sky red and more. Couldn't keep her down. The Yankee come, she's still alive. Many others wouldn't have survived. For all you sing these songs, give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She's only 15. Give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She just reached half a century. So just put up your hand and sing this song. Oh, 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 oh. Sing for me, nigga. They say that her development is slow. They talk tata, condemning her wherever they may go. If Christopher Columbus could come back alive, you see. As he see her, he will recognize her immediately. But they talking trash, they deserve some lash. She is so unique, beautiful and sweet, and she is developing, but it is not a secret. She has somewhere to go, and will admit. So all you sing this song, give her some time. She's not yet in her prime. She's only